Hello, I'm Andrew Pearce, and this is The Daily Show from the Daily Mail newsroom. Coming up, why going to the gym may not be just a workout for your muscles, it could also be very good for your brain. What do you do if you've got to choose between your cat and your lover? I'll be speaking to a journalist who chose the cat. She might not be the only one who would make that choice. I'm going to talk to Ingrid Seward, the editor of Majesty magazine, in the continuing fallout from the Buckingham Palace statement. Bonnie Greer on the race row caused by Lawrence Fox, the actor, on Question Time when he was accused of being an out-of-touch, white, privileged actor. But first, the Uber PR man on what should Harry and Meghan do next in their new life in Canada. The Duke of Sussex has said he's taking a leap of faith in stepping back from being a senior royal, saying there really was no other option. Speaking at an event on Sunday night, unexpectedly, it was a charity event, he said that he and Meghan had hoped to continue serving the Queen, but without public funding.
The UK is my home and a place that I love. That will never change. I've grown up feeling supported from so many of you, and I watched as you welcomed Meghan with open arms, as you saw me find the love and happiness that I'd hoped for all my life. Finally, the second son of Diana got hitched. Hooray.
So a speech which some people think was misjudged, in which there was some suggestion that had he been disrespectful to the Queen by apparently criticising the content of that statement, agreed with Buckingham Palace. But what do this couple do next? They're moving to Canada. Possibly they're going to spend time in North America. Joining me now is the Uber PR agent to the stars, an expert in PR crisis management, Mark Borkowski. Mark, if you were advising them, maybe you are. What would you say they should do next, bearing in mind they've got to now pay their own way?
Well, look, I mean, it's interesting you've sort of picked apart that speech, and whatever they say, whatever they do in the short term is going to be cut apart, looked about, and be perceived to be very negative. They haven't enjoyed this negative publicity, but they have a good opportunity now. The difficulty they're going to have is that the reports coming this afternoon saying that they've got to drop any sort of royal banner, that many of these things that they have registered now have to be started again. I mean, striking out as Harry and Meghan Windsor is going to be something of an impossible sort of challenge. But there's many people who trade under the royal name who used to work at Buckingham Palace and stuff. So I don't think it's going to be as brutal as that. But they clearly feel they have a mission. They clearly feel they have a purpose, and they want to contribute positively to the world. You know, they have issues related to mental health. That's very close to Harry's heart. You know, if you were looking at the sort of mental health and well-being market, I mean, I think Bloomberg did a recent report on that sector being worth $4.2 trillion. Yeah. So there's money to plunder. So they've got to find clean money. That's number one. They can't make the mistakes of Tony Blair, who spoke for any old oligarch, and became tainted very quickly for that. They would look at business deals. They'd look at streaming rights. They were looking possibly at, book deals. They would follow what the Obamas and the Clintons possibly did, and even look towards Oprah Winfrey. Their box office, they will attract global attention, and there's going to be a definitive rift now between, we saw that in that speech, there is a rift now between Buckingham Palace, who now have a new game in town. Now, can they sustain it? They say they want to pay their own way. They want to pay back the costs of Frogmore Cottage. You know, there is money in them. One agent over the weekend, Jonathan Shalit, was on the radio suggesting they were $1 billion brand. I mean, he's no slouch. And I think there is absolutely some money to harvest here. And yes, they can do it, but can they do it without the sort of sheen of the royal family? Can they, the very existence of their notoriety is because of what they've inherited and where they've come from and what forces have been working against them. There seems to be a strong division straight down the middle, a bit like Brexit, Andrew, you know, half the country for it, half the country against it. The older audience, the boomers, seem to think that he's let everybody down by not fulfilling his duty, has got sort of, you know, distracted. Younger people see him as someone who should be allowed to conduct his life, being a happy individual, doing what he wanted. And he's got free of that now. But I have an inkling that they've already got some deals tucked away. They've already had some conversations, and I think they already have some confidence that they'll be able to announce things. But make no mistake, they are under the microscope now, and this is a story that's just going to keep on giving.
Oh, I could ask you just briefly too, Mark. Meghan Markle has indicated that she would like to move to the United States, but only after President Trump has gone. Now, I've got a hunch he's going to win the next election. Do you think she harbours political ambitions of her own, bearing in mind she's friends with the Clooneys, who are very well connected, and they're friends with the Obamas?
I'll tell you something that I have done. I have made a deal with the bookies. I've struck a bet that in 15 to 20 years, maybe 30 years' time, Meghan Markle will run for president. I mean, she's clearly ambitious. And can you think of that? Look, who would have thought Trump would be president? Who would have thought Ronald Reagan would be president? It is not beyond the mind of contention to think that this woman could get there. She's deeply focused on where she wants to do, and she has a sense that she can offer something. So why wouldn't she go? Why wouldn't she go for the Democrat nomination?
All right, that's Mark Borkowski, PR agent to the Stars. I'm going to get down the bookies very quickly and see what odds there are on Meghan Markle running for the Democratic presidency nomination in 15 years' time. Joining me now is Ingrid Seward, editor of Majesty magazine and royal biographer. Ingrid, the Queen, in my view, showed herself to be an incredibly tough negotiator. By God, that woman's got steel in her veins. Were you surprised in Harry's speech last night on Sunday when he appeared to say, wasn't what I wanted at all?
I was totally surprised by that. I thought he got what he wanted. But I suppose if you're Meghan and Harry, you never really have completely what you want, because I don't think anyone, least of all them, is really sure of what they do want. I think, of course, it's the Queen, as she did with Diana, will be saying, you know, treat them gently. You've got to treat them gently. This is my grandson and his wife, and I don't want to push this any way towards an awkward situation for the monarchy. But then she would step back and let her advisors deal with the situation as they used to with Diana. And then she looks like Mr. Nice Guy, and they're the tough ones.
He had, of course, suggested in that statement, which he released without her knowledge, that he wanted to, in a sense, we said 1 foot in, 1 foot out, have your cake and eat it, the more uncharitable people said. That was rebuffed firmly by the Queen. And also, what I was surprised by, Ingrid, the military connections that Harry's been very proud of, he's had those taken away too.
Well, he had to relinquish his official military roles, which he was Colonel-in-Chief. He wasn't Colonel-in-Chief, but he was... I can't remember what it is now, actually.
It was an honorific, wasn't it, with the Royal Marines?
It was an honorific of the Royal Captain General of the Royal Marines.
That's right.
Which is what Prince Philip was, and in fact that's what Prince Philip was when Prince Edward bucked out of the Royal Marines. So it's the most senior of his military titles, and I think he was very honoured when his grandfather bestowed it upon him. It was, I think, the first thing his grandfather did after he'd announced that he was, retiring.
What about?
Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was going to say the other thing, Ingrid. I mean, he's lost that honorific. People say he's lost HRH, but only to a point, Lord Copper, because actually the HRHs for both Harry and Meghan have, if you like, been put in cold storage. So I guess the calculation is, Ingrid, that if it doesn't work out their new life together for one or either, they can come back. He can come back, pick up the HRH, and pick up from where he left off.
Yes, the HRH is a style more than a title, and therefore it's just sitting there for use when it need be. But the royal family are very particular about styles and titles and protocol. And I suppose the Queen is, there's no way she would want to strip Harry and Meghan of that title, which really probably doesn't mean anything to people in America, but it does enable them to use this royal. I think your wonderful Robert Hardman was saying earlier that, this is, will they be able to use Sussex Royal, because the connotation, even though it's the name of a potato,
yes,
the connotation is that they are royal. But of course, they are not part of the royal family anymore, and yet they are. It's very confusing.
It's very is. Ingrid Seward makes it so simple, though. That's Ingrid Seward, editor of Majesty Magazine and Royal Biographer. Now, if you enjoy The Daily Show, please subscribe to us and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google or Spotify. And get in touch too. Email me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk or follow us at mailplus_. Now, the Actors Union Equity has backtracked from comments it posted online which branded Lawrence Fox, the actor, a disgrace to our industry, and calling on members to unequivocally denounce him for comments he made on Question Time, on BBC Question Time last week about, guess what, Megxit.
Call it by its name. It's racism. She's a black woman, and she has been torn to pieces.
You can't.
She has been torn to pieces.
It's not racism.
It absolutely is.
We're the most tolerant, lovely country in Europe. Let's celebrate our goodness. Not racism. It's so easy to throw the charge of racism at everybody, and it's really starting to get boring.
What worries me about your comment is you are a white privileged male who has no experience in it.
I mean,
I can't help what I am. I was born like this. It's an immutable characteristic. So to call me a white privileged male is to be racist. You're being racist.
Equity is saying that the statements posted online were later deleted because they'd been published by two rogue members of its minority ethnic members committee, but other members of Equity have said actually the statement was approved by a more widespread group of people. Well, joining me now is Bonnie Greer, the American-born columnist, author and playwright. Bonnie Greer, I don't know if you actually watched the Question Time programme, but the political fallout continues. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here.
Pleasure.
And I think partly it's that's an interesting question. It's very complicated, actually. I think, first of all, Lawrence Fox has the absolute right to say what he feels. Yeah. And I would defend his right to say what he feels. But it's a bit silly what he said. And I think in a sense it throws up into relief a kind of, a sort of underground whinge that's been growing for a long time about the way our society is growing. So that's basically how I feel, and I don't really take the whole thing terribly seriously, although it is interesting to see people's reactions to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, you say what he said was silly. Why do you say that, Bonnie Greer?
I think because I've been thinking about that, and I'll give you an example. If I were to say to you, and I'm using a big cliche because this isn't really accurate, but if I were to say to you, I know why a Yorkshireman who, working class, whose dad, went down the mines, I know why he voted Brexit. I understand that. I get it. Maybe I do, but the thing is, I don't have the experience of that. And I think a Yorkshireman might say, well, Bonnie, but you don't know what my life is like. How can you make that kind of big, broad generalization? And that's what Lawrence Fox did, and I think the professor who reacted, basically that's what she told him. You have the right to say what you like and say what you feel, but you're not in a position to say it with any kind of credibility or accurately because this is who you are.
Is it? But
and
is
that's,
it?
That's,
yeah. But I was saying it's an interesting analogy. It's an interesting analogy you use about the white Yorkshireman who voted for Brexit, because lots of people who oppose Brexit say that white working class people in the north of England voted for Brexit because they're racist.
And I think people have said it, and I think that's a ridiculous thing to say. How can you sort of make a statement out of a whole bunch of people? And that's what I'm saying. But like I said to you, if I wanted to take a terrible cliche, that's the one I would grab, and that's one I use as an example of what I'm saying.
But white people, they are allowed, aren't they, in the interest of... I mean, I appreciate you say he's entitled to say what he said, even if you don't agree with it, but you would defend the right of white people to say, This idea of Meghan and racism is exaggerated. They're allowed to say it, and their view has some relevance, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know about relevance, Andrew, but they certainly have a right to say it. Because, again, as I wasn't as clear as I could be, there's a position that you say something from. I mean, I can make a statement about that terrible airplane crash, but I'm not a pilot. I don't really know what it's like. And I think that's what she was trying to say, that, in something as serious as this, Lawrence Fox, an old Harrovian, is not in a position to make a statement like that with any kind of credibility. Yeah, he certainly has the right to say it, but it was a silly thing to say. And I think that's what she really is trying to say. And I think also that in these days and time, we all have to actually check our language, and we all have to actually look at what we say. We can't all speak and represent everybody just because we're human beings. I mean, there are particular stances and places and lives that we've lived, and he hasn't lived that life.
All right.
So for him to actually front her off, which is what he did, looks petulant and silly.
All right, that's Bonnie Greer, typically forthright, American-born columnist, author and playwright. Coming up, we've got the solution to keeping your mind and your body fit all at the same time. And if your cat doesn't approve of your partner, I don't know about my cat, what should you do? We're going to be speaking to someone that's had to make that choice, but first it's time to find out what's on TV tonight with, yes, Claudia Connell.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to start with Diamond Dealers and Cockney Geezers on Channel 4, which is just a great name for a programme. Trotter's Jewellers are in Bethnal Green in London's East End. It's a family-run business where they sell bling to some very interesting people. I mean, it sounds like a comedy, but it's actually a documentary. At this stage, it's a one-off, but it's very entertaining, and the characters are so charismatic that it could easily make a great reality series, and I wouldn't be surprised if that follows. Danny Dyer narrates, the female Danny Dyer. And then also we have Cold Feet on ITV. Adam and Karen are now a couple and they're living together along with all of their kids. And it's not making for a very happy household. There's lots of rows about getting into the bathroom. This is one of the things that annoys me about TV dramas and films is that Karen has a huge house. So is it likely that there's only one bathroom? The creators of Cold Feet have hinted that this might be the last series, and I think it probably needs to be. It's not awful. It's just not as good as it used to be. Something that is very interesting is the prosecutors on BBC 4.
Part of my frustration is over the months you embark on a journey. All of a sudden we've got to go back to that day, remember exactly who we were, how it made us feel, what was the weather like, and it feels cruel.
I mean, we've had prisons, schools, the military. There doesn't seem to be any institution that isn't now going to open itself up to TV cameras. And now it's the turn of the CPS, that's the Crown Prosecution Service. The cameras go behind the scenes to see the British justice system at work and exactly what's needed to secure a conviction. In tonight's episode, there's a man who's crashed his car into a child and killed the child, but he wasn't drunk, he wasn't using his phone, he wasn't speeding. So the dilemma that they have is what do they charge him with?
If you want to get in touch, email me at dailyshout, mailplus.co.uk, or you follow us at mailplus_. Now it's time for our regular city update with Ruth Sunderland, business editor of the Mail. I'm so pleased by this, Ruth. The IMF, are they a bit optimistic about post-Brexit Britain?
They are.
Yes!
There's been a bit of a turnaround. So you might remember that before the referendum, just before in 2016, when she was asked,
Madame Lagarde
was Christine Lagarde, who was then in charge of the IMF.
It was also, let's remember, George Osborne, the Chancellor's great mate.
Exactly. She was his big friend. So she was asked, what's Brexit going to be like for the UK economy? And she said, anything between pretty bad and very bad. Now, today, one of her successors has turned around and said, actually, the UK economy is going to do better than France, better than Italy, better than Japan, and even actually better than Germany. Now, before you get too carried away, Kristalina Georgieva, I think I've said that correctly, who is the successor to Madame Lagarde, has also said that Brexit could be painful. the growth that she's forecasting for Britain, by historic standards, is not great. So she's talking about 1.4% this year. That's still better than all those other European competitors, but it's not brilliant by historic standards. And it is dependent on us having a kind of, trouble-free Brexit at the end of this month, and on forming a new trade relationship with the EU. And the first of those, we can be a bit more sure about probably than the second. But it is a big change of tune, really.
I'm basking in it.
You're basking. Would you want another piece of good news?
Yeah, go on.
So you know how everybody, all the banks and bankers and finance firms are all going to be leaving the city, and there was going to be a huge
Project
Project Fear. Well, actually, an analysis of Freedom Information documents has found that 1,000 firms from the EU have applied to set up shop in the city.
Yes. That's
so
a
the
result.
Opposite.
We'll have a bit more on that tomorrow. That's Ruth Sunderland, business editor at the Daily Mail. Now, Matt Gatwood is our deputy sports editor, who's in here blushing from ear to ear because he got another prediction totally and completely wrong. Now, Matt, if I remember rightly, not only were we going to lose the third test to South Africa, we were going to lose it badly on about the third or fourth day. We crushed them on day what?
Well, we crushed them on day 5,
right.
On the morning of day 5, which I'm delighted about.
Did we even have to bat a second time?
No, we beat them by an
innings. So we beat them by an innings.
We beat them by an innings.
Are you impressed that I know about that?
I'm very impressed. We beat them by an innings and 53 runs, and it could have been much more had they not put on 100 for the last wicket. So, an absolutely marvellous victory from England.
Mr. Stokes, another century.
Stokes got a century. Pope got a century, which was probably more important. The young lad who got his first Test match century and looks like to the manner born. Absolutely brilliant innings.
Great.
Dom Best, the spinner, got some wickets, so that's been a problem area for us. So all in all, it was a brilliant performance. The opener set the platform, and the middle order came in and did really well. Now, this doesn't mean it's all. I think we will win the series now because because South Africa
2-1 now.
Well, 2-1 up, 1 to go.
Yeah,
South Africa looks shot to bits. Their key fast bowlers now banned for the next Test match, and they look like their confidence has gone through the floor. So I do think we'll go on to win the series, but I do think this is a very young England team, and they are volatile, and they do have good days and they have bad days.
Okay, now Dan Evans won in the Australian Open, but he should have, shouldn't he?
He should have done. It was a good win for him. He's the British number 1 with Andy Murray obviously being out injured. He won. It was a good victory. But what was great was that obviously Tim Henman, who was his captain at the ATP Cup, this new event just before the tournament, said Evo needs to cut out a few meals. So it was a good.
So he's a lardy, is he?
That's what Henman was suggesting.
Yeah.
He's not. Blimey, he's gone 5 sets overnight in the first round of the Australian Open to win this. To win the first game, so he's not exactly sort of a gut bucket. He's okay, he's fine. But that was what Henman suggested, who is thin as a rake, by the way, suggested that Evans could miss out the odd meal. So he was quite pleased in saying, well, not bad for a fat lad winning a 5-set game.
Did he say that?
No, he didn't quite say that.
Yeah, right.
We might be suggesting
that. Yes,
that.
I think you should.
Yes,
revenge of the fat lad.
Exactly.
And finally, Liverpool fans finally believe they beat Manchester United.
They beat Manchester United. We've all known, everyone knows the title's in the bag that's been coming, but Liverpool fans in there sort of so worried about celebrating, even though they're 16 points ahead and all this, because they haven't won it for 30 years.
They haven't lost a match this season, have they, in the league?
They haven't lost a match this season. They've lost 1 match in 61 games.
Wow!
They're 11 hours without conceding a goal. They're unstoppable. They're going to win the league. We know it's just a matter of when. But for the first time, interestingly, the fans yesterday at the end of the game started singing, "We're going to win the league," which normally, teams will sing far too early, but Liverpool being so superstitious about not having won it for 30 years and blowing lots of chances down the years previously, finally yesterday on the whistle were singing, "We're going to win the league."
And will the owner of that highly paid Manchester City team be very cross about this?
Manchester City team, Pep Guardiola, he will be very unhappy. I mean, he's seen it coming as well. Right. Everyone's seen it coming, but he won't be happy. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer won't be happy because his United team were played off the pitch yesterday. It was only 2-0, but could have been much worse. So yes, lots of both sides of Manchester will not be happy with the way Liverpool are just careering towards the title.
And just finally and briefly, Matt, what's your wrong prediction for this week going to be?
Let's think of a prediction. So we've got the 4th test starts on Friday. I'm very confident England are going to win that to take the series 3-1.
Even I could have predicted that. That's Matt Gatwood, not looking contrite at all. Now, do get in touch. Email me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk, or you follow us at mailplus_. Now, we all recognise the endorphin high that comes after a fitness class. Well, those of us who do fitness classes recognise it. It's often what motivates us to go again. But is there an additional benefit to using fitness to help our mental health? Researchers have found that trained muscles help to clean the blood, much like kidneys and liver. Well, joining me now in the studio is psychotherapist William Pullen. Now, William, I've had 2 great sessions with a personal trainer in the gym in the last 3 days. I'm feeling slightly exhausted, a lot exhausted, but I'm not sure my brain's feeling any better. Is it, do you think? Is it functioning better?
How would I know?
Well, isn't it supposed to be that the blood, it clears the blood? Isn't that the idea of this research?
No.
Ah.
No, not. You see, this is a common misunderstanding. I'm a psychotherapist, so I'm not so much on the physiological side. What works for me when I run with my clients is we're talking about psychological change. We're talking about emotional change. So it's not really about brain performance. It's about emotional change. When I take you from A to B, you grow on that journey.
Do I?
Hopefully.
How do I grow?
Well, because instead of being stuck in an office or reciting or even re-traumatizing yourself, going over and over the things that trouble you, you do it while you're on the move. And that sort of tricks the mind into believing that actually you're making progress. You're taking your troubles on the journey with you.
So as you run with your client, they're talking about their issues. And at the end of the run, maybe it's 20 minutes, half an hour, physically, the heart's pumping, the endorphins are going, and you think they're going to have a more balanced view of the problem because of your input plus the physical input.
Yes, I mean, there are many, many aspects to it, but an important part is that we're not running the whole time, and in fact, all of it is authored by the client. They decide how much we'll be walking, sitting, running. I watch their choices.
Right.
So they decide how fast they want to move with this problem, and then I watch them. Are they people that accelerate their way through sadness? Do they drag their heels, or whatever the expression would be?
And do you make all of your clients go through this?
I have some that I see at home, just regular clients, and then I have ones that I see in the park.
But do you recommend to all of them that they go to? Right.
No.
So who do you suggest it? Who would it work better for?
Well, who would it work better for? It's a better question.
Yeah.
I think that, a lot of people that come into therapy, particularly the first time, are people in crisis, and those people don't want to be out. They need to find a safe space.
Yeah.
So anybody who's in a massive amount of crisis, I probably wouldn't mention it to. I think it suits best people who have a more open and modern mind and don't feel that, there's something shameful. A lot of older people, myself included, are still hung up on the idea that there's something un-British and embarrassing, particularly for a man, to sit in a room and talk about your problems. It's easier to do that on the move. And in fact, that's one of the pleasures of being a psychotherapist, is you get to meet other men, and it doesn't have to be weird when they talk about their feelings. When you're moving, it's that much easier for men. It's very natural for men to sort of move and run together and offload, or in a pub, but you don't do it in a room together. And
That's William Pullen. He's a psychotherapist with a very interesting idea. And finally, when Maureen Payton began dating a man who would ignore her cat, she began to reconsider. So much so, his behaviour towards her cat led to the end of their relationship. I'm pleased to say the freelance journalist and author joins me now. Maureen, from one cat lover to another, how could your lover not have liked your cat?
Well, I think he was more in love with himself than with anybody else, including cat. And he just saw my cat as a nuisance, really. It wasn't that he was cruel, but he just couldn't care less, really, about, helping me to look after him.
And the thing is, you'd had cats all your life. When you lost your husband, you were cat-free at the time, rattling around for a couple of years in your big old house in North London. You decide, get a cat. You had two, only one stuck around, Sir Jasper. And then you developed a relationship with, what is it okay to call it, an old friend?
An old friend, yes.
And he...
And it was just really, it should have stayed as a friendship, but, when you lose a partner, when they die, or other sort of tragic circumstances, really, I can't think of anything worse and more tragic than death, but you want another companion. And I suppose it was really a case of sort of wanting him to be more than a friend, because I was pretty lonely at the time.
And Sir Jasper had sort of stepped into the vacuum. He'd become your friend. He looked after you. So when the man you refer to as Zed in this fascinating article today was cool and indifferent, somebody had to go.
Yes, absolutely. I just realised I think that the way anyone behaves towards animals is a very good indication of character. It's one of the best. If they're kind to animals, then they're usually pretty kind individuals. But self-centered people are really not that interested in anyone, especially animals. I just realised that it was just was not working out. Neither Jasper nor I were happy with him. And eventually, Jasper's sign language, although he can't speak, he's pretty good with the sign language, told me that I really had to get rid of Z or Z.
So he got the push. You've got a new friend now, a new partner, Norman, who's very fond of Sir Jasper and typical of an adorable cat. Now he's devoted more to Norman, almost possibly more than you.
He is. It's quite an irony, really. I mean, Norman's had a lot of cats, almost as many as I have over the years, including a very demanding Siamese. And they really do test the patience. But, he was very fond of his Siamese Chyla. And upset when she died. And Jasper's now 14 and getting rather elderly, and we have to look after him a bit more. And Norman, I heard him today just downstairs talking to Jasper and saying, good boy, good boy. And he makes more fuss of him than ever, really, so it's perfect.
The cat lover extraordinaire, Maureen Payton, thanks for joining me. Well, that's all we've got time for today. For the latest from the Daily Mail newsroom, come back every day for briefings at 7 a.m. You can come at 12 noon and, of course, 5 p.m, where you can listen to me all over again. That's all from me, Andrew Pearce, from The Daily Show. I'll be back tomorrow. Have yourselves a great evening and good night.